Okay, so David put together this awesome resource list that we're kind of going to be, he's going to be covering some things in there. And then he needs you to, because this is going to take a little bit of time, he wanted you to start downloading something, right?
Yeah, so we're going to be using VS Code. I'm highlighting it in the doc. Hopefully you can see it. Scroll down just a little bit under Tools. That's going to be our IDE. If you don't know what that is, it's basically like a fancy text editing thing. That's where we're going to be writing any code. That's pretty much it. So just download that, get it set up. It sounds like you know what you're doing, so you're fine. If you if you can write code in it, it works. I'm David. I am a Cal Lutheran alum. Still not really used to that. That's recent. I graduated this year, early this year. I think I kind of forgot already. Anyway, I graduated with a computer science degree, and I am currently working as a web software developer, kind of mix of both at LAUSD right now. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope you are too. Okay, so I just want to kind of preface this by saying, like I said, recent graduate. By no means am I like a super industry professional being, doing this for like 30 years. Dude, my first job was in intern web development. It's kind of funny. Someone mentioned using screen readers. My first gig was actually making sure it doesn't read any like bits of the code, and so it's not reading like anything weird or anything like that. If there's anything I want people to take away from this today, it's that use your resources and don't be afraid to look things up yourself. I'm sure my techie people out there can agree when I say your best resource is your search engine. Google, whatever you use, look things up. That's the best way to learn, if you ask me. And to get things started, we're going to be doing just some basic intro to HTML stuff. So I'm going to be looking at this site right here. This site was my best friend when I was doing my first gig, like I said. It's really nice. So I'm going to be going to this HTML section right here. So just to kick things off, for anyone with no working knowledge at all. Oh, so what I did, by the way, I just went to any old tutorial page that they had in HTML here. And there's really nice, like, try it yourself sections. And this is like the code section of it. And this is what it'll actually like look like. And if you change it at all, so I'll like get rid of some stuff there, and then you push run again, it'll actually update, which is really nice. So I'm just going to undo that. So first of all, just basic HTML knowledge before we really get into it here. I'll explain what a tag is. So all HTML is kind of like based in tags, right? So you see all these like angle brackets right here surrounding all these different things in orange on my screen. Okay, they're like red if it's like light. That's a tag, and there's so many of these different tags. They all have different properties. So for example, this P tag right here, this site right here is kind of nice because it even has like little descriptions. This is a paragraph, right? That's when you would use this P tag. You can see it's like wrapped. There's like a P here, and there's a /P right here. The slash is like the ending tag. So anything you want to have those tags, anything you want to have your element like inherit the properties of the tag, you would like wrap it around, if that makes sense. So you see surrounding these P tags is this is a paragraph sentence that they put here. So anything in here would inherit the properties of this P tag, and P is just so happens to be this paragraph thing. Another example is up here, this H1. This is like a heading tag. If you don't know what a tag is, that's when you would kind of go here and just look it up or just do one of these. HTML P tag, something like that. And of course, the same website shows up. The site's great. I loved it. And it'll teach you everything right here. So if you don't know something, just do one of these. That's what I always do. It always works. Okay, so that's HTML in a nutshell. Very, very basic. There's also these other tags like body, head. That's kind of formatting related. If you want the specifics, it's all here for you just to go over yourself. And then I'm going to touch briefly on CSS. This is really where, oops. This is really what makes the site look like what it is. Because without CSS, this site, because I think this site looks all right. It looks pretty modern. If you don't have any CSS, it looks like a site from like the early 2000s or the 90s or something. Kind of like this one right here. It's very primitive looking. So anyway, just as an example of CSS, similarly, right, we have these tags again. So anything style, right? See the style tag, and here's the ending one with the slash. So anything wrapped in here would be your CSS. There's different ways of doing it. This is known as, I believe, internal CSS. Basically, you can have it in this tag up here above the page. I think you can put it anywhere really. And the way they have it right now is it's affecting the whole page. So different properties, right? They put here background color, they put here for any H1 tag, and then they put these curly brackets here, and then they set the color to white, and they have text align to center, so it'll be in the center of the page. So now any H1 tag will inherit these properties that you set kind of like custom. They're kind of like custom rules or like, you know, any colors or anything you might want on them. Positioning, just.
Hey, David, I have a question.
Mhm.
Well, actually, two things. One is, is it possible for you on your end to like zoom in a bit, like to onto that? Oh, yes, solid, sweet, thank you. The second thing is, how does it know what white is? Because you know, like the hex code for white, like the hashtag, it isn't like all zeros or all Fs or something.
Yeah,
How does it know?
There's just like built-in like colors for them,
Okay.
so you can do like black too, right? And that'll work. There's other ones like green, spell it right. And this is when VS Code will come in because it should know what the different options are and it'll kind of auto-complete them for you, but we'll get to that. Same thing with center and all that. There's probably like, I think you can do that maybe. There's like different kinds of units you can put. Never mind, that doesn't work. But there's various kinds of units and things. Yeah, like this one uses PX right here. There's another one like, I forgot the letters for it. But anyway.
Gotcha. So CSS is the rules that you're setting for the HTML to follow?
Pretty much, yeah. If more like visual rules, because there's also like functionality. So
Understood.
any button, like to copy to clipboard, for example, and I'll show that later. That's more in JavaScript. I'm maybe not going to touch on that. We'll see. There's different ways of doing CSS. We're going to be doing it this way, where it's like in all on one page, just like this. But there's also something known as external CSS. If I can find it in like inline. Maybe I can do a search for it here. Probably this one. Yeah, here we go. External, internal, and inline. So I'll show you an example of external, but you can kind of see it right here. This is just linking to another file, and it's just reading from that file instead of having it right here, all in just the same document. I do want to show inline because that's kind of the quick and dirty way of doing it. So you see here we have another H1 tag and another P tag. But instead of having the bracket right here, right, where it's just quick, like nice and simple, it kind of extends here. We have this style equals and a bunch of random crap that they put in here. So you can, instead of putting it, oops, sorry, I'm jumping around here. Instead of putting it right here where it's all nice and organized, you can be lazy and just put it right here. If you're just going to use it one time for this one element, unlike your, what was this again? The good one. Unlike this one, it doesn't apply to every single element. It'll only apply to the one that you have it set in. So that's where you would also use this. But again, like I mentioned, my first job was actually getting rid of stuff like this and organizing it up here. So might want to avoid doing this. But if you ever see this, that's what it's doing. This is also CSS. It's just inline. It's not internal like this. And to show you just how important CSS is, I'll show you actually a website that I worked on. This is my capstone project. I'm hosting it from this computer right now, so the link is a little abstract. If you want to look at it, I will put it in the chat right now. Just know, due to the nature of what I'm using, if I stop the server, the link will change. So it's kind of only for my use as it is right now. But anyway, it does work. And I will actually, I'll show you the CSS that is taking right now. So this is all the work I did for the capstone. All of this is CSS. You can see it's pretty similar, except now it's like fancier colors because it's in an IDE. Visual Studio Code is recognizing that this is a CSS file and it's highlighting the syntax nicely. Basically just like fancy color coding for it. So if I go back to the main page here, you can see the same, I just realized, a little close for comfort, but it'll work. So you see, this is the code for that site that I made myself. And you can see these style tags again. And I have this include main.css. And main.css is right here. And that's what all of this is. So just to show you how important CSS is, I'm actually going to delete that for now. Go back here, get a good look at that site now. And if I refresh it, it's going to look like you probably shouldn't use this site. You're probably going to download something that you don't want from a site like this, right? But if we put it back, there we go. Looks modern again, or at least I think so. Anyway, that hopefully covers it for CSS and HTML, just like the basics. I know that was like kind of fast. Are there any questions so far about that? Yeah, so what was that before? It'll take like multiple, and your IDE should recognize which ones. So this one's like light blue. You can change it to another predefined like color like setting that they have. You can also do like something like this. Right, that'll work. Is that 6? Yeah, that works. Apparently that's green. So yeah, that'll work too. It might even take some other codes, but yeah, like it'll take whatever you throw at it, really. One last thing I want to cover about CSS, and that would be classes and IDs. Matter of fact, let's go back here. Actually, we'll just do it here. CSS and IDs. Oh, there's not one for this one. Maybe here. Okay, here we go. The ID attribute, nice. So this is, I guess they define it as HTML, but it relates to your CSS. So classes and IDs, pretty much the same thing. They function the same way. An ID is just a class only for one thing, and that'll make sense in a second after I explain it, as I hope it will. So here we have, again, our familiar style tag, right? So this is our CSS. Whatever's in here will apply to whatever element we define, right? But instead of having like a regular tag name up here, see we have a # my header, millennials will call it a hashtag. So this is not like a normal tag name, right? It's really whatever you want to name it, right? I'm just gonna name it like ABCD. I'm gonna change it just for that. I'm gonna change it down here too, where they define it again. You can put whatever properties you want on it. Background color, they said they wanted a light blue, regular color here. Padding just makes it like kind of bigger, and a text align center so it's in the middle. Very cool. And what they do in order to use this, which I called #ABCD, similarly to that inline styling, this is fine though, they do this. Instead of style equals whatever, whatever, you would do ID equals, and then the name of what you defined here. See, I'll do the same name. If I run it again, it'll work because it's the same name. Keep in mind, this goes for like just programming in general. If you spell something wrong, it's not going to work. So make sure you get the name right. But that's an ID. If we have another one, it should, oh, well, it was supposed to not work according to this, but common practice is if you're going to use an ID, which is denoted by this pound, you only use it for one thing. It's an ID, right? There should only be one of them. So if I'm going to do something like this, where I have an H1 and an H2 using the same thing, I should make it a class, which is denoted by a period here instead. So IDs are the pounds, classes are periods. Everything else is the same about it, though. You can do all this stuff. And instead of ID equals, say if I run it, it won't work anymore. So instead of ID, I'll just change it to class right here. And there we go, works again. And this is acceptable because it's a class. It's not just a unique identification thing. So
Is it just best practice to use a class for, or an ID for one thing, or would it actually work if you used it for multiple things?
apparently it works for multiple, as I did right here.
It's just not the best practice.
Yeah, probably not the best idea. Because if anyone else looks at the code you wrote, maybe you move on to like another company or whatever, or someone else is looking at a project that you made and they see ID, you're probably going to think it's only used here. So it's just kind of readability, I would imagine. So best practice not to do something like this, and instead class back like this, change that to a period. Guess I can briefly touch on JavaScript. So if I actually use this, going back to my website here, if I actually like upload, let's say, this random zip file, and actually here, I have this copy link button. So to prove it to you, I'll copy like some random something, right? So you can see I have that copied. Now if I hit copy link right here, it'll say link copied. If I can paste it, it'll be the link. Now that is from JavaScript. So I said CSS is more like the how things look. Remember when I removed the CSS, it just looked like plain old text on a white screen. Now that all the CSS is restored, it's like nice background and everything. JavaScript is more like the functionality side. So you click a button and something fancy happens. That's probably what JavaScript does. And I can show you that in here. I think that's close enough. I actually have, I guess you would call it the internal JavaScript. So here I have the script tag. That's how it knows it's JavaScript, and a bunch of random code that I'm not going to go over. I also have this file, a separate one, progressbar.js. This is, if you're uploading a larger file, it'll show like a progress bar up here. So that's how that handles it. But anything like fancy, like dynamic functionality, likely going to be JavaScript, and you can do it in these script tags, or you can just call it with a separate file similar to CSS, like I did up here with the include main.css, and main.css is over here. Okay, I know that was kind of a lot to take in, but actually, any questions for now? So JavaScript and CSS will kind of like communicate. And that's where, so this is a little higher level now, but that's where these classes and, oh, what the heck? That's where these classes and IDs will come in. Because if you just do everything in line, right, you just have div style equals whatever, whatever, you're not really going to be able to have it communicate with more complex parts of your website. So let's see if we can actually find certain elements within these JavaScript functions. Well, anyway, you can pass them into these JavaScript functions, and you can have them manipulate parts of your page too. So you would pass in like an ID or an element, or sorry, an ID or a class, and then the JavaScript can manipulate that and change it dynamically. So it'll show up on your website. So it's like both, right? It'll communicate, and that's why you would rather use a class or an ID with a name rather than just some nameless style equals whatever. It's kind of like a variable in high level languages. Because this is just about the time where I'd say, good luck. Go try something on your own. Because at this point, that's like the basics. That's like pretty much everything that I learned at my first gig. So from here, I would say just, I don't know what you want to do, right? I'm not you. Maybe you want to put like a bunch of buttons on your website. Maybe you want to put like a list with a bunch of whatever, I don't know. Maybe you want to add like a background image or something like that. But I would recommend just starting here, starting on one of these, hit this try it yourself thing, and just start changing the code here, hit run, see how it works. And if you like this, then you can just copy all of this stuff and put it into your .html file that I'm actually going to show you how to make right now because I forgot about that. Okay, so everyone has VS Code, right? We all got that set up?
Yes.
Cool, cool. So what we're going to do, oh, what the heck? This is a new file, and it just goes untitled. Select the language. Can you do it this way? Sorry, I'm learning too. Okay, everyone try that, I guess. Hit this new file thing right here. And it says select a language. I guess you can just click this. Let's just try, let's type in HTML for now. Oh, cool. And just a test, I'm just gonna copy this. Okay, so it'll ask you where to save it. You can save it wherever you want. I'm just gonna put it in downloads. And let's open this in the Explorer. So if you open it, just open the file itself, right? Untitled 1.html, I just saved it from VS Code, that's what I did. And if you just double click it, it should open in your web browser. And this is a super primitive, old school way of like testing how things work. But for now, we're just gonna do it this way. I guess for reference, this is not exactly how I'd made this website, but this is a great start just to kind of mess around with different things that you want to try, right? So for example, I just copied that part. Let's get another one here. Like this too, just copy these elements. I can just dump that down here too if I want to try it. And you can see the IDE going to work here, right? This is why we would rather not use some random text editor. These IDEs are a little more robust. So you see color red here. It's actually going to show you what it looks like beforehand. Light blue, it'll show you what that looks like. IDEs, definitely use your tools. And another thing I want to quickly show, you might think here, if I do something like this, let's say, you know, you're not the world's greatest typer, or like you just didn't copy and paste it very well, right? This looks super ugly. Well, we're not just using a basic text editor, we're actually using an IDE. And with that, you can say something like format document right here. The shortcut would be Shift-Alt-F. So I'll just hit that. It's all nice and neat again. So don't spend a whole lot of time formatting and doing whatever. This is not a typing test. This is programming, right? You just format it, use your tools. So that's another thing. If you do it this way, if you use VS Code, make sure you save it before you go and open it and wherever you did save it. Otherwise, the changes won't go through. It doesn't like auto save, if that makes sense. Other than that, you might need to, it might say like no formatter installed or something and might want you to download an extension. Go ahead and do that. That's just the nature of VS Code. It's like a really lightweight thing. I mentioned in the resource sheet, it's not Visual Studio, not to be confused with Visual Studio. Visual Studio is like a paid thing. This is free, and it's also like has a lot of extensions you can see here that other people just make. It's similar to like a web browser, like if you ever got an ad blocker before. So if it does say no formatter, go look for one, they just go like find the first thing and just install it. It'll be fine. And from there it should work. That's what I did if you're worried for whatever reason. Other than that,
So I just went to, if anyone is lost, I went to this exact website that's showing on David's screen. So this W3 schools, and went to the HTML section and just copied some random, one of the random ones and put it in VS Code. And then now I'm copying CSS because I would like to have an icon, and that's not working. But I'm going to try and figure it out first, David, actually.
yeah, cool. And I didn't really mention it much this time around, but definitely just like, you know, if you don't know, like, for example, with this issue right here, it'd be like, just look it up, how to add image HTML or something like that. And then you just look through and hey, look at that, W3 schools right there. That's a nice one. Tutorials point, I use that one. So whatever you find,
Okay, now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, sweet. This is what I would like to add. These little clouds. I'd like to add the clouds. Okay, so I'm over here and I'm copy pasting all of this, right? Okay, I'm over here in VS Code and I've pasted it in here. I click save and now I come over here to my downloads and I open it and there's no clouds. Do you know why I don't see clouds?
Go back to that W3, what they had.
This one.
Yeah, that might be it. I was thinking that. I also see that they're using script for some reason. That's kind of weird.
Well, I also did copy paste this in there. So to answer Gina's question, probably.
Right. So
Or they
right.
have to,
So
there can only be one HTML at the top and one HTML at the bottom.
that's what should usually happen. I should have mentioned that
Understood.
too. Yeah.
Let
Probably the
me-
same thing with head and body. So yeah, I just kind of glossed over that, huh? But if you copy something
Mm,
from the body, just put it in the body of yours. If you're just going to go through that same copy and pasting thing.
I have my clouds. It was the HTML thing. Thank you.
Okay, resharing. So if you copy something from the body, let me go back here. Right, so here we have head, body. So let's say I want like this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I see that it's surrounded in body here.
Mm-hmm.
So I would keep it that way in mine. So I would put it in my body.
Can you have more than one body?
I don't think so. So like body, HTML, head, they're kind of like a one and done kind of type of tag. Um, div and p and all these like h1 whatever, that's stuff that you can have wherever you want. And just a little tip, div is a really good way of just assigning some css to like a large group of things. So actually I'll kind of do that here. Right, so this is a little advanced, not really. So this is another thing you can do. I I believe you call this like nesting it, right? So I have this div tag and it spans all the way down here. So within this div tag is this h1 and this p. Div, by the way, is just kind of like a section, right? It just defines like a section of the page, whatever's inside. So a good use of it is assigning these properties to all of this as well, as long as it doesn't conflict with anything. So in my div, I said the class is div1. So up here, all I did is just make the background color aqua. And you can see this P and this H1 are also this color too. So surrounding it, right? It inherits the properties of this because it's within that section. If that makes sense. So that's another thing you can do too. And I forgot to mention one more thing. something you could do in your browser that's super helpful if you want to like find out what certain parts of the page will do is you can hit F12. I think it works on pretty much every browser. If not, you can just right click and hit inspect. I'm sure most of us have used it at one point. You can do some pretty useful things with this, pretty evil things if you wanted to as well. But here, if you go into, should be called inspector on everything. Let's see. Oh, elements in Chrome. This is similar to Chrome. I'm gonna go back here. You can see all this code here. And if you go click this button, it should be the leftmost button if you're on Chrome, and you hover over different parts of the page, it'll like show you the code over on the right of whatever element you're hovering over. And if you click it, it'll like lock into it. And then from here, you can see what the code actually is. So it's really useful if you want to like reverse engineer it or steal it for yourself or something like that. There's also a bunch of other things within these dev tools as well. And if you want to just go to some like famous Twitter account or something, you can do some pretty evil things with it if you're into doctoring images and tricking some people. Just go to some random Twitter page here. And what you can do, I'll open this inspector thing again. Inspect, let's do like followers. This will only change for you. Don't think you're actually like crazy hacking or anything like that. But let's edit as HTML. And we can say, let's say this is your Twitter page. Yeah, you can just say you have that many followers or something like that. You can screenshot it, send it to people. If you want to pretend like your friend's Twitter was hacked or something, you can be completely evil and do this to them. But that's just kind of the stuff you can do with this. Of course, if I refresh this page, it'll go away. It goes back to normal. But just to let you know, like what kind of things you can do with this. You can see in this part down here, I realize now it's probably kind of small for you guys. I don't think there's any way to make it that much bigger. But here it'll show you more CSS sides of things. So what kind of properties it's inheriting. So you see there's certain classes there should be. Background color, scroll bar color apparently. So that's really useful. If you want to see how a page works, you definitely would want to use this F12 inspect kind of dev tool thing.
On HTML, when you are trying to insert an image, I'm assuming the image has to exist somewhere in order for it to recognize the file name, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where does that image need to exist?
So for the purposes of this, it should be, it's like a path on your computer. And I guess by that logic, any like website, any web server is just another computer. They're just not like, this is not a personal computer at that point. It's dedicated to just running the server. So it's probably just going to be a path on that machine. And to kind of show you how that works here, I'm going to go back to my file uploading thing. Let's upload like this pineapple picture. There's a little loading bar going off. Now I have this copy embed feature that I noticed. So you'll see this URL is just the regular site's URL, and it says /uploaded files and then something.png, right? And if I click it, it's actually the picture of the pineapple. That is pointing to this part of my computer, this uploaded files part. So if I actually go here, you can see there's the pineapple. It's just showing there. Matter of fact, if I copy this in this file explorer here, and I paste it here, I'm pretty confident. Okay, well, there might be some permission or whatever. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, here we go. You can see it just like that. This is the location on my computer. and you can just open it in a web browser. So that's pretty much what images on servers are doing in a very loose way, very simplified way of putting it, but pretty much that's what they're doing, yeah. So to answer your question, you can put the picture wherever you want. You would just have to specify in your code where it is, and that's how your site would know where to pull it from. Something I didn't mention in my introduction, I have a degree in computer science. I never once took a class on web development or HTML or anything like that. I don't even know if we offered that. This is just stuff I learned on the job on my own. So I only know so much, right? Whatever knowledge I do have, I'd love to impart to all of you, but I guess to slightly preface a part two just a little bit, one very quickly go over something that I just now saw on my notes that I should have gone over. For anyone who's looking more for like maybe something advanced, if you already knew HTML or you wanted to know more like industry practices, because to be completely honest, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you should know, definitely if you want to get into web development, but it's not the day-to-day, if that makes sense. A lot of this is just good knowledge to have and how the primitive side works, but you're probably not going to go in and like edit like base CSS. Maybe you will, but likely it's going to be a lot higher level, more complex than that. And what I mean by that is there's tools like Angular, which you can implement stuff like, they'll use like CS HTML files, which is C# HTML. C# is a high level language. You can do a lot with it. So it kind of like communicates with that, right? You can have like if statements and all kinds of logic. It's the more programming side of it. And there's also Ionic framework. So if you don't want to do all the CSS manually, that's what I did for this site manually. It took a long time. I just kind of want to do it from scratch because I like doing things from scratch. But this is more like, you know, you grew the tomatoes yourself and you made your own tomato sauce for that. This would be like you went to the market and got your own tomato sauce. It's just pre-made. It's easy. It's fast. Easy because you would need to know how to use it. But if I were to take a guess, this Ionic site used their own framework. These buttons look eerily familiar for the ones that I'm using at work right now. And you can see it looks nice. And you don't have to do the styling yourself. You just say Ionic button in the tag, and it'll just look like this. So you would have to get that set up in your own project. It's kind of a process. But for those who are looking for more like higher level stuff, this would be it. That being said, I haven't set this up myself. I haven't done a project in here, just using it for work. But this is more like the industry stuff for anyone who's wondering. You know, look at that, Angular, that's what we're using. Okay, so part two, you go into this dev tool thing again, and Chrome, it should be right next to the inspecting, and Firefox is going to be right here. It should be this kind of double rectangle thing. If you click it, it will simulate like a little mobile device, as you can see. So this page is good, right? It's is what we would call responsive, meaning this is a smaller screen, so the layout changes, right? It's not the same layout as what the heck, as this, right? So there are different ways of doing that. The way I think most people do, it's called Bootstrap. This will make your site responsive. It's just kind of a thing you add to your site. I think it's kind of like Ionic that I touched on briefly at the end. Again, this is kind of a more advanced thing, but you can have some logic where it's like, if the screen is like too small, then the layout would kind of change. So you can make it like adaptive that way. Again, we would call it responsive. So yeah, they have it right here, responsive. So, and there's like different devices that you can kind of pretend that you're using. So an iPad would, so there's like what, iPad Pro or something?
Where was that button on Chrome?
It should be, yeah, right next to the This one should be right here. Fun fact for, I guess I had some opportunities to kind of drop this one, but fun fact for Philip, I'm sure Gina definitely knows this one. I mentioned JavaScript briefly, definitely not Java. JavaScript, very much not Java, very different, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would know both. But kind of fun fact for the friends and family at home. Very, very different. Actually, also, you mentioned using some CMS, like that's what you were familiar with, like
WordPress.
WordPress, stuff like that. That's honestly fine too. Don't ego yourself and think that you have to like do everything yourself. Like I said, it's totally fine to go to the store and get like a microwave dinner or something like that. That's totally fine. That's kind of what I forgot what it's called. WordPress. Yeah, that's like a go home, easy, quick and easy instant dinner. Totally fine. It works. It works, right? The technical knowledge you could apply to that as well. Honestly, it's probably a good idea to use something like WordPress and all that, because getting a site off the ground and like to the public is a little kind of like the hard part. So like my site that I made is local hosted, which is probably not a good idea, but I just wanted to, I egoed myself. I wanted to have the from scratch experience, and that's what I got.